This happened to me back in November 2024, and I still don't go anywhere alone at night anymore. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I genuinely think about it every single time I get in my car now. So I had just left this concert in the city with my friend Bree, but she had to leave early because she had work the next morning, so I stayed for the last two songs by myself, which I know sounds stupid now, but at the time I didn't think it was a big deal. The concert ended around 11:30 p.m., and I had about an hour drive back home through the suburbs and then some rural highway stretches. My car is this old 2011 Honda Civic that my dad gave me when he upgraded, and it doesn't have anything fancy like backup cameras or even Bluetooth, so I was just driving with the radio on some late-night talk show I wasn't really listening to. I got on the highway, and maybe 10 minutes in, I noticed there was a car behind me. It was a dark sedan, I think a Nissan or Toyota or something really generic, with one headlight that was slightly dimmer than the other, which is the only reason I even noticed it at first. I didn't think anything of it because obviously there are other cars on the highway at night, but then I took my exit to switch highways, and the car took the same exit behind me. Still, I was like, okay, that's not weird. People take that exit all the time. It's a main connector. But then I took the second exit about 15 minutes later, which is a much smaller exit that goes toward the back roads near where I live. And the car with the dim headlight took that exit too. And now I was starting to feel like something was off. But I also didn't want to be paranoid because, like, what are the odds, right? So I told myself I was being ridiculous, and I reached over and turned the radio completely off because I needed to focus. And honestly, the silence in the car made everything feel worse. But I kept checking my rearview mirror and the car was still there, not tailgating me or anything, just staying a consistent distance behind me, maybe 4 or 5 car lengths. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was at like 18% battery, and I didn't have my car charger with me because I'm an idiot, and I kept forgetting to buy a new one after my last one broke. Plus, I was thinking if I called someone, what would I even say? That there's a car behind me on a public road? I'd sound insane. Anyway, after another 20 minutes of driving, the car was still behind me, and now I was on this stretch of road where there's basically nothing, just some fields and a few farms, and I realized I needed to test if this person was actually following me, or if I was losing my mind. So I decided to pull into this 24-hour gas station that I usually pass by without stopping. It's one of those small ones that's mostly just for truckers with only 4 pumps and a tiny convenience store attached. I put my blinker on and pulled into the gas station, and I watched in my mirror, and my stomach literally dropped because the car pulled in right behind me. They didn't even hesitate, just followed me straight into the lot and parked at the pump across from mine. I sat there for a second with my engine still running, trying to figure out what to do. My hands were shaking and I felt like I couldn't breathe right, but I was also thinking maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a coincidence and they just need gas too. So I turned off my car and got out, and I started unscrewing my gas cap really slowly just to see what they would do. And the driver's side door of their car opened. When this guy got out, he was maybe in his 40s, wearing a jacket and jeans, nothing that stood out. But he didn't go to the pump. He just stood by his car door, and he was holding his phone and looking down at it like he was texting someone. But he kept glancing up at me every few seconds. I pretended to start pumping gas even though I didn't actually put my card in yet, and I was watching him out of the corner of my eye, and he started walking toward me, still looking at his phone. And I heard his footsteps crunching on the gravel, and my brain was screaming at me to get back in my car, but I felt frozen. Like if I ran, it would confirm that something bad was happening, and maybe I was still wrong. Then he looked up from his phone, directly at me. And he said, "Hey, sorry, do you know what time it is?" And his voice was totally normal, but something about the way he said it felt wrong. Like he didn't actually care what time it was. He was just saying words to get closer to me, and I could see his phone screen was on the Maps app, and it looked like he had a pin dropped, but I couldn't see where. I said, "I don't know," and I immediately stopped pretending to pump gas, and I pulled the nozzle out, even though I hadn't pumped anything. And I went to open my car door, but he took another step closer and said, "Wait, I think I know you." And I said, "No, you don't." And I got in my car and slammed the door shut and locked it as fast as I could. And my hands were shaking so bad, I dropped my keys on the floor, and I heard them clatter against the mat under the pedals. I heard him say something else, but I couldn't hear it through the closed door, and I bent down to grab my keys, and when I sat back up, he was standing right next to my window, just staring at me, not saying anything anymore, just looking at me with this blank expression. and I saw him raise his phone up like he was taking a picture or recording me, and I swear I absolutely lost it. I started my car and I just backed up without even checking behind me, and I heard him bang his hand on my trunk as I pulled away. And I drove out of that gas station so fast, and I got back on the road, and I kept checking my mirror, and at first I didn't see him, but then, maybe 2 minutes later, I saw those headlights again. One dimmer than the other, coming up behind me in the distance. I still had like 15 minutes to get home, and I was full on panicking now because what was I supposed to do? Lead him to my house? So I grabbed my phone and tried to call 911, but my phone died right as it started ringing. I don't know if the call even went through. And I just started crying because I felt so stupid for letting my phone die and for going to the concert alone and for not filling up my gas earlier in the day when it was still light out. The car was getting closer behind me, and I was driving faster than I should have been on these back roads. And then I saw the lights from the main street up ahead where there's a 24-hour grocery store and some other businesses that were still open. And I turned into the grocery store parking lot, and I parked right under one of the big overhead lights near the entrance where there were a few other cars. I ran inside and I found a worker, and I was talking so fast I don't think he understood me at first. But I told him someone followed me, and I needed to use a phone. And he let me use the store phone at the customer service desk, and I called my dad and he said he was coming right now and to stay inside. And I waited there for almost 30 minutes until he got there. When we walked back outside together, the car with the dim headlight was gone. I never saw it again. And my dad followed me home and nothing else happened. But when I got home and I was finally alone in my room, I checked my Instagram messages and I had a new message request from an account with no profile picture and no posts. And all it said was, "Saw you tonight." And I reported it and blocked it immediately. But I still don't know who it was or what they wanted or if it was even the same person. I never reported it to the police because I didn't have a license plate number or any proof really, and I felt like they wouldn't take me seriously. But I think about it constantly, and I've taken a different route home ever since. This happened back in 2018 when I was driving from Lexington, Kentucky to my parents' place in Ohio for the weekend. It was around 11 p.m. and I had left late because of work. I was taking Route 68 north, which is this rural 2-lane highway that cuts through farmland and patches of forest. Not many towns along that stretch, just the occasional gas station or closed diner every 20 miles or so. I had my playlist going and was in that zone you get into on long night drives where you're awake but your mind is kind of on autopilot. About 40 minutes in, I saw someone standing on the shoulder ahead, lit up by my headlights. It was a guy in a dark hoodie and jeans with his thumb out, hitchhiking. I don't pick up hitchhikers, never have. My dad drilled that into me when I first started driving, so I just kept going and passed him. He turned his head to watch my car as I went by, and I got a quick look at his face in my side mirror. Pale, thin, maybe 30s or 40s, hard to tell. I thought for a second about stopping because it was cold out in the middle of nowhere, but I kept driving. He disappeared behind me in the darkness. Honestly, I didn't think much of it after that. Just another random moment on a long drive. About 30 miles later, I pulled into a rest stop to use the bathroom and grab a coffee from the vending machines. It was one of those small rest areas, just a brick building with bathrooms and vending machines and a couple picnic tables outside under a light. There were only 2 other cars in the parking lot, a sedan and a white van. I parked near the entrance and went inside. When I came back out with my coffee, I walked toward my car, and that's when I saw him. The same guy from the highway, standing under the light near the picnic tables, smoking a cigarette, same dark hoodie, same jeans. I froze for a second because it didn't make sense. I had passed him 30 miles back and I hadn't seen any cars stop near him when I drove by, which meant someone else picked him up, drove him here, and dropped him off ahead of me. But why here, at this exact rest stop? He wasn't looking at me. He was just smoking and staring at his phone, but I felt this weird tension in my chest. I walked quickly to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I sat there for a minute telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it wasn't the same guy. Maybe I was tired and seeing things. But no, it was definitely him. Same build, same clothes. I started my car and pulled out of the rest stop back onto the highway. About 5 minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me in my rearview mirror. Not unusual. Plenty of cars use that route. But these headlights stayed the same distance behind me for a while. I sped up a little, they sped up, I slowed down, they slowed down. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just someone going the same direction at the same speed, but my hands were getting sweaty on the wheel. Then my GPS dinged and the screen changed. It started rerouting me. I hadn't touched it. The blue line on the map shifted off Route 68 onto some side road I had never heard of. County Road 412 or something. The GPS voice said, "In 2 miles, turn right onto County Road 412, and I said out loud, "No, I didn't select that." I tried to cancel the route, but when I tapped the screen, it just kept rerouting me back to that same road. I turned off the GPS completely and kept driving straight on Route 68. The headlights were still behind me, and now they were getting closer. I could see it was a van, a white van. And my stomach dropped because one of the vehicles at the rest stop had been a white van. I sped up, pushing 70, then 75. The van kept pace. I thought about calling 911, but I didn't know what to say. Some guy I saw hitchhiking is maybe in a van behind me? It sounded insane in my head, and I wasn't even sure yet if I was really being followed. The GPS came back on by itself. The screen lit up and started rerouting me again. Same road. County Road 412, but this time the voice said, "Turn right now," even though the turn wasn't for another mile. I reached over and unplugged the GPS unit from the charger. The screen went black and I felt a little better, but then I heard a clicking sound from my door locks. I looked down and saw the lock buttons going up and down by themselves. Unlocking and locking, unlocking and locking, like something was overriding the system. I hit the manual lock button and held it down with my palm. The clicking stopped. The van behind me flashed its high beams. Once, twice, 3 times. I saw the turn for County Road 412 coming up on my right, just a dark, narrow road disappearing into trees. No street lights, no signs of houses. The van flashed its lights again and started pulling into the left lane, like it was going to pass me, or pull alongside me. I made a split-second decision and yanked my wheel to the right, turning onto County Road 412 without signaling, hoping the van would keep going straight on Route 68. But when I looked in my mirror, I saw the van turn too. Its headlights swinging onto the dark road behind me. The road was narrow and winding through thick forest on both sides. No other cars, no lights anywhere, just my headlights and the van's headlights behind me. I floored it, my car engine roaring, the trees blurring past on both sides. I took a sharp curve too fast and my tires squealed. The van kept up. I saw a small gravel turnoff ahead on the left. It looked like it might be a driveway or a logging road. I didn't know, but I took the turn at the last second, cutting my lights off as I did. My car bounced onto the gravel, and I drove about 50 feet in and stopped behind some trees. I turned off the engine and ducked down in my seat. A few seconds later, I heard the van drive past on the main road, the sound of its engine fading into the distance. I waited in complete silence, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I counted to 60, then started my car and slowly backed out onto County Road 412 with my lights still off. I drove in darkness for about a quarter mile until I saw the glow of Route 68 up ahead. Then I turned my lights back on and merged onto the highway heading north. I drove the rest of the way to my parents' house, going 80 the whole time, checking my mirror every few seconds. I never saw the van again. When I got to my parents' place around 1:30 a.m., I sat in their driveway for 10 minutes just breathing before I went inside. I didn't tell them what happened. I still don't really know what happened. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I overreacted. But my GPS hasn't worked right since that night. It randomly reroutes me to roads I didn't select. And sometimes, late at night when I'm driving alone, my door locks still click on their own. I work as a radiology tech at County General, and back in 2023, I had the worst drive home of my entire life. I still can't explain what happened that night. So I had just finished a double shift because one of the other techs called out sick, and they were desperate for coverage. I stayed from 3 p.m. until almost midnight. My feet were killing me, and I just wanted to get home and crash. But when I got on Route 47, like I always do, there were these orange construction signs everywhere saying road closed, detour ahead. I groaned out loud because I was so tired. I didn't want to deal with this, but I had no choice. So I followed the detour signs onto this country road I'd never been on before.
It was called Millbrook Road or something like that. My GPS was being weird right away. It kept saying recalculating route every few minutes, and the estimated time kept jumping around. Like first it said 18 minutes, then 34 minutes, then back to 22 minutes. I figured it was just glitching because of the detour, but whatever. I just wanted to get home. The road was completely empty. No other cars, no street lights, just my headlights cutting through the darkness and the sound of my tires on rough pavement. About 10 minutes in, I passed this burned-out barn on the left side of the road. It was pretty creepy looking, all black and collapsed in on itself. But I didn't think much of it, just some old, abandoned farm building. Then maybe 5 minutes later, my GPS said, turn right in 500 feet, but there was no turn, so it recalculated again and told me to continue straight. I was annoyed at this point because I just wanted clear directions. Then I saw a dead deer on the side of the road, on the right, and I had to swerve a little to avoid it, which woke me up a bit because I realized I was zoning out from being so tired. I turned my radio up louder and rolled down my window to get some cold air in my face. Then maybe another 5 minutes later, I saw a parked car on the shoulder. It was a dark blue sedan, just sitting there with no lights on, no hazards, nothing. I slowed down to see if anyone needed help, but I didn't see anyone inside or around it, so I kept going. Here's where it gets weird. My GPS said, turn right in 500 feet again. The exact same thing as before. And again, there was no turn. I looked at the screen and I swear the route looked exactly like it did 10 minutes ago. Then I passed the burned out barn again, the same one, on the left side. I said what the hell out loud because I knew I hadn't turned around. I'd been driving straight this whole time. But there it was, the same collapsed black structure. I thought maybe I was so tired I was getting confused. Or maybe there were two burned out barns on this road. So I kept going, and I tried to pay closer attention now. My heart was starting to beat faster, and I turned the radio off so I could focus. Then I saw the dead deer again, same spot, right side of the road, and then the parked blue sedan, same exact spot, left side shoulder, no lights. I pulled over and stopped my car. The engine was still running, and I could hear the clicking of my turn signal, even though I hadn't put it on. I reached for my phone to call someone, but it was dead. Completely drained, even though I swear it was at 40% when I left the hospital. I plugged it into my car charger, but it wouldn't charge. The little lightning bolt wasn't showing up. I started breathing faster, and I knew I needed to calm down and think logically. I'd been awake for almost 21 hours straight. I was probably just exhausted and not paying attention to where I was going. So I put the car back in drive and continued down Millbrook Road. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white, and I was counting in my head trying to stay alert. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. I passed the barn again. Third time now. Same spot, left side, and I actually yelled this time. I said, "This isn't happening," but it was happening. I saw the deer again. Fourth time, and the car again. Fourth time. I was trying to figure out what to do. Should I turn around and go back the way I came? But I didn't know how far back the highway was. And what if I just ended up in the same loop? Should I stop and wait until morning? But that was hours away, and I was in the middle of nowhere with no phone. I decided to keep going and just see what happened. Maybe I'd break out of whatever this was. The fifth time I came up to where the barn should be. I saw it again. But this time, there was something different. There was a person standing on the shoulder of the road, right past the barn. I slowed down and my headlights lit them up and my stomach dropped. Because it was me. I was standing there on the side of the road wearing my same scrubs, my same jacket, and I was waving at my car, trying to flag myself down. I slammed on the brakes and my tires made this horrible screeching sound on the pavement, and I just sat there, frozen, staring at myself in my headlights. The other me was still waving, more frantically now, and I could see my own face looking desperate and scared. I didn't know what to do. I was shaking, and I felt like I was going to throw up. Then the other me started walking toward my car, and I heard footsteps, crunching on gravel, getting closer. I jerked the wheel to the left and floored it. My car fishtailed a little, and I heard gravel pinging against the undercarriage as I sped past, and I didn't look back. I just kept driving as fast as I could. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the wheel straight.
And then suddenly I saw lights up ahead, bright white construction lights and orange barrels, and I was back on Route 47, the main highway, just like that. I drove straight home and I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself get out of the car. I never took that detour again. Even when there's construction, I go way out of my way to avoid Millbrook Road. I looked it up later on a map and I couldn't find any road with that name anywhere near Route 47. My roommate thinks I fell asleep at the wheel and dreamed the whole thing, but I know I was awake. I know what I saw, and sometimes late at night I think about that other version of me, standing on the side of the road, waving. And I wonder if she's still there, waiting for someone to stop.